Hello and welcome to day 3 of Polsky's summer focus on tech, marketplace, and SaaS solutions. Today, you're going to get an opportunity to look inside some of the great companies that have been coming through the Polsky Accelerator over the course of the last 10 weeks. An intense digital-first engagement that a number of students have been going through here at the University of Chicago. My name is EJ Reedy, and I'm a senior director at the Polsky Exchange, part of the Polsky Center, the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the university and beyond, serving both the university community and the larger south and west sides of Chicago. I'm going to be your moderator for the beginning of today's event because we have 4 fantastic speakers here for you today to set the context about what is happening in terms of entrepreneurship and tech here within the Midwest and also looking beyond. There's a lot of activity and we're incredibly lucky to have such wonderful speakers with us to share and to talk about the trends that we're seeing, because there is so much opportunity out there, even amongst this difficult time of the pandemic that we see today. So before we begin, I wanted to be sure to say thank you to our amazing donors who make this work possible. This summer, we increased the size of the Polsky Accelerator to serve 20 student-led teams. That is nearly double where the number of teams that we were serving just 2 years ago. And all of this work, all of the expanded work around entrepreneurship that the Polsky Center is able to support is possible only because of our donors. Specifically, the Caruso-Zeo Foundation, Donna and Philip Zarconi, and Ellen Rudnick and Paul Earl. Your support is incredibly helpful and I know has impacted the lives of so many students this summer, as you will see later in today's event. So with that, let's go ahead and turn it over to our panel, because I'm sure you want to get into the nitty-gritty of our discussions. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jackie Diamante, who is with Hyde Park Venture Partners, to share a little bit more about her work and how she is involved in the tech ecosystem.
Hi everyone, EJ, thanks for having us. I'm Jackie Diamante, work with Hyde Park Venture Partners. We are an early stage venture fund headquartered in Chicago and focused on early stage tech investing across the mid-continent. And we consider that to be Southwest, Midwest, and parts of Canada. We get involved at the seed and Series A stages, so typically writing checks of as low as $250,000 up to about $3 to $4 million. And excited to be here today.
Great, Prashant, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm Prashant Shukla. I'm a VP at Origin Ventures, also headquartered in Chicago. We have an office in Salt Lake City, Utah as well. We invest mostly between the coasts, so we stay outside of core markets like San Francisco, New York, or Boston. We do have investments in those markets as well, but tend to focus between the coasts where we think there's more opportunity and founders can be underserved by capital. The firm has been around for 20 years. We're on our 5th fund. We do seed and Series A, writing checks between $500,000 and $5 million, typically leading the rounds that we do. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Neil.
Hi everyone, name's Neil Salas Griffin. I'm the managing director of Techstars Chicago, born and raised Southside Chicagoan, by the way. I've been in the entrepreneurship and tech scene in Chicago for the past 14 years. I've started companies, I've worked across a bunch of different VCs, but in my current role, Techstars, we've invested in over 2,000 companies over the past 14 years, and we manage one of the top global accelerators, and couldn't be more happy to be here. I've been doing a lot of work with University of Chicago and the Polsky Center over a long, history. I'm a Hyde Parker myself. So looking forward to, getting to know everybody and hopefully sharing some knowledge along the way.
Great, thank you, Neil. Jonathan.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Ellis. Not originally from Chicago, but I've been here almost 13 years now, from England originally. So I'm the founder and managing director of Sandalphon Capital. So I was an angel investor in Chicago 2014 to 2016, decided to go full time, raised a small fund. And we focus on really pre-seed through Series A, really pre-seed through seed, and then we follow on into the A. We focus primarily on Chicago and the surrounding Midwest, but we really like underserved markets in general. We're a generalist fund, so we do SaaS and marketplaces probably the bulk of our portfolio. We also have some tech-enabled service investments, an IoT investment, and even a CPG investment. And I'm also the founder of Midwest Tech Connect, which is a new virtual summit. Basically, we'll probably run it twice a year to connect investors and startups from across the region and beyond in sort of one place. Big believer in getting everyone in one place and making things efficient for people. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you so much, Jonathan. All right, I'm going to turn it actually back to you, Jonathan, because I want you to talk a little bit more about your teaser there. So talk a little bit about, some of the opportunities that you're seeing specifically in tech here in the Midwest, and you've really jumped all in recently to try to serve an I think an unmet need within the ecosystem here of matching early stage capital to a broader set of tech entrepreneurs. So can you give us a sense of how you ended up there?
Sure. Yeah, so my background, I was doing middle market investing actually, and I always had an interest in tech and entrepreneurship. And so that was sort of like my side interest. I used to sneak out of work early to go to pitch events and networking happy hours. And I kept hearing people say 4 or 5 years ago, there's not enough early stage capital in Chicago. And I thought that was crazy. There's a ton of activity, Polsky, 1871, a lot of startup activity happening, a lot of strengths of Chicago and really the surrounding region in terms of schools and people coming out of industry with expertise, and really a critical mass, I think, of tech talent, tech momentum, innovation. And so, yeah, I figured it seemed like a good thing to get on board with. Now, what I didn't appreciate at the time was, I think there is more funding now for early stage tech in Chicago. I think the gap elsewhere in the Midwest is also probably still there, and people are sort of catching up. But then even on I was focused on seed. I think even sort of earlier, the pre-seed round, there's still gaps. And so yeah, I've now spent 4 years doing laps of the Midwest, getting to know these different ecosystems, really seeing like the different strengths of different cities, just given the DNA of the who's there, what's there, who's really stepped up in a sort of ecosystem building role. Yeah, it's just been really exciting to sort of lean into that, and we're hopefully going to raise our second fund soon, and then we'll be out doing it all over again.
And you're really raising the profile of so many emerging companies and the events that are here set to take place. And just remind me, that's a week away? Is that roughly?
Yes, it starts next Tuesday. Yeah, and so the idea with that, I was going to these conferences sort of all over the place, and everyone was doing really good stuff in terms of getting either critical mass of investors so the startups show up, or vice versa. But no one was really doing it on sort of a pan-regional scale. And I was doing office hours, and I kept thinking, oh, there's 3 to 5 investors I can connect you with. But I was becoming the bottleneck, and I was dropping the ball on sort of follow-ups and stuff. So I'm like, actually, if we can get all the startups which are sort of hitting our funnel in some way, and all the investors that we would be introducing them to anyway, and we sort of get that critical mass, everyone can kind of figure out who's interested in each other, who we can kind of get out of the way. So yeah, it's just trying to give a boost to the the efficiency of that early stage ecosystem, and obviously depending on your business, either times are really good for you right now with COVID or really bad. But regardless, I think giving people a fundraising boost right now was helpful. So that's what we sort of leaned in to do.
Right, Jackie, I saw you doing a lot of head nodding there. Is there anything you want to pick up there? I know that you're involved in, I think, a number of other kind of current cutting edge activities. Anything you want to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the first thing is that Jonathan is a little bit underselling what he's put together and the extreme scale of it. He talked about there are all of these, maybe smaller events that are going on in different cities, and I think that's just not necessarily true when you compare it to where we were this time last year, especially. Like we're entering conference season, and most of the places where I used to run across Jonathan, like in a conference, hallway or whatnot, those events are not happening. And so I think we are really in need of this I guess more marketplace, or like the creation of more liquidity in the marketplace. And Jonathan, I don't know the exact numbers. It's something like, I mean, 800 startups. Is that around the right magnitude?
850.
850 I mean, it is just like an insane number of meetings that are going to take place. And I think it's really good for the ecosystem. I mean, we're trying to do some things like this on a smaller scale, and you know, Jonathan's also involved with Chicago Blend locally, which is you know, aimed at increasing the diversity, equity, and inclusion across the startup ecosystem within Chicago. So that includes you know, VCs and startups being funded, and we've been trying to do more of this on a micro scale just in Chicago among the blend list that we have for board members. We're launching something similar to the exact, you know, kind of workflow that Jonathan did with Midwest startups. And you know, it's quite an undertaking, even when we've got a whole team from, you know, folks from Origin are on involved in the effort. Kind of all of the folks around the ecosystem are working towards it. So anyway, long story short, I think, you know, we shouldn't underscore what Jonathan's doing, and really what we need to be doing more of, I think, during this remote time where, you know, normally we'd all be in the same room doing this, and, you know, we'd probably share an Uber from downtown down to Hyde Park. And then, you know, after the panel's over, we'd probably all have these like side conversations, and, you know, people in the audience would come up and talk. And like, we're just kind of missing some of that liquidity in the network. And the more we can do to create that, I think the better we can keep the momentum going in our Chicago ecosystem.
Right. Neil, do you want to jump in here? Obviously, you're seeing a lot of continued opportunity here in the Chicago ecosystem. Anything you want to pick up on?
I mean, there's a lot to add, but I think what they've said so far covers most of, I think, what would be relevant. The only other thing I would contribute here is, you know, my primary effort over the years has been on the earlier stage of the pipeline for education, you know, access and opportunity. There's a lot of people out there who have all of the ingredients for successful, you know, businesses and being founders, but they don't necessarily have the resources to take the leap, either at the friends and family capital stage, seed stage, or just like the foundational knowledge that you get from a place like UChicago or Northwestern that you don't get coming from other institutions necessarily. So I've been an educator for my entire adult life. And I think that's probably one of the major keys right now to broadening participation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Neil. All right, Prashant, what is it that you're seeing in terms of kind of current entrepreneurial opportunities? You know, I know we're in the midst of a pandemic, but I'm sure you're, you know, making new investments and seeing, you know, opportunities for growth in your company.
Yeah, I mean, back in March when everything came crashing down and the lockdown started, and I'm sure everybody here thought, you know, there could be some pretty bad repercussions for the venture market. Startups, capital could dry up, credit was freezing up. What we've seen over the past few months, and I think the data supports it, you know, deals have still been happening at a pretty rapid pace. Deal volume is pretty good. Valuations haven't really come down. Maybe some of the investors here aren't too happy about that, but I think that's true. You know, the other thing we've seen is in the early stage capital market. Some people have touched on this. You know, Chicago didn't have enough early stage capital, probably still doesn't, given all the opportunities that I think exist. You know, with this pandemic and everyone using Zoom, there's no difference between a founder in Palo Alto and a founder in Chicago and a founder in Kansas City and a founder in Austin. And so I think West Coast funds are kind of opening their eyes a little bit to investing in founders anywhere who are working remotely, whether it's Chicago or elsewhere, which is both a good and a bad thing. I mean, I think it creates new opportunities for ecosystems. Not just at the Series B stage when an NEA and Excel would look at a Chicago company, but at the earlier stage. So it's good that there's, I think, more exchanges and meetings happening and more focus on those ecosystems. It's going to make it more competitive maybe in some of those tertiary, secondary markets. But I think overall it's a healthy thing for the ecosystem. And so we're happy that founders that previously weren't getting a look are. And Zoom and, you know, the pandemic in some ways is kind of leveling the playing field a little bit, making location less important. Which I think is a good thing.
So so today we're focused on, you know, SaaS companies and marketplace. companies. What's different right now for a company that's trying to emerge and to establish itself as an entrepreneurial player, in these spaces? Any comments as to, what you'd recommend, or things that you are particularly seeing for folks that are trying to establish themselves and are not established players? Jonathan, maybe I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, I think right now, I mean, what Prashant was just describing, that, funding's still good, valuations are still good. That's very true of companies right now that are, in sectors that are not that impacted by COVID-19 or the economic slowdown, or they, if anything, they might even have some tailwinds. I think I did a survey in April of VCs, and I think everyone thought like 20 to 25% valuation reductions is what we'd see. I think what we're actually seeing is that, companies that are still interesting as VCs are sort of like tightening the filter are getting funded. And if anything, valuations are going up because there's more competition for those deals. And then others are just sort of not getting funded yet. And so I think the ones that are coming out of the gates right now need to really, try and be in that sort of always right upper decile, upper quartile of deals that VCs are seeing to kind of get a shot at getting funded. But it's, the bar's got higher than ever. VCs, some of them are still triaging portfolio company issues. They're not going to the events where they meet people. So it's just harder to get in front of VCs right now. And so demonstrating that, the problem you're solving is still a problem and your solution is still relevant, and you can really show execution through this. So, even if you can't close deals right now because customers are just not like engaging in that way, if you can be building a really good late stage pipeline, so like when things get back to normal, they'll be there. You can sort of, still demonstrate, those early elements of product market fit, I think, which investors are looking for, and still demonstrate some momentum, even though it's not translating into revenue just yet and real traction just yet. So it's hard. I think the way people are, getting in front of customers has changed. The way people are sort of, even selling and buying, everything's sort of tweaked a little bit for COVID. So the nice thing is if you're a young startup, you can kind of, be nimble and adapt to those versus sort of having very set rigid processes. But it's certainly challenging.
And that definitely matches, back in some previous work that I did in my role at the Kauffman Foundation. The startups that typically are like hardest hit in times of downturn are those that were started, in the years right before a downturn. If you're starting now, you have, what's happening to the extent that any of us know what's happening. You have the ability to, take advantage of some of the turmoil and some of the opportunities. And so that definitely speaks, I think, to a lot of what you've seen historically, even if we're seeing it at a slightly larger scale this year. Neil, do you want to jump in here? I know obviously you're running an accelerator and a network of alumni that have been through Techstars. What is it that you're seeing, that's kind of unique right now for your portfolio companies and as you're looking forward?
Yeah, so a few of our companies had to make some pretty aggressive pivots past March, right? So we had a few that lost 90% of their revenue overnight, as many of you all can attest to. That being said, I couldn't be more proud. It just took time. We had to weather the storm. Some people had to land the plane and figure all that out. But for the most part, the trend that I'm seeing is people adapting their technology to purposes that support a post-COVID era. Some of them are moving towards like long-term, towards the future. Some of them for a short-term, like cash flow purposes, decided to pivot, knowing that they're going to double back to their original model once things settle down. But specific examples, we had one company, GoNanny, that was focused on technology for childcare facilities. And once all the kids got sent home, they repurposed their technology, rebranded as GoLogic, focused on supporting small businesses that need to build up their technology to keep their businesses afloat. And now they're moving back towards the childcare model and kind of doing a hybrid. So there's a bunch of really cool examples like that I pay close attention to from an investment standpoint, because seeing what entrepreneurs do in times of crisis like this, and how creative they can get with their models and how they adapt and survive is a major signal for their potential as great founders and leaders. So that's mainly it. But yeah, I could go all day with tons of fun examples and stories, because every single day I'm talking to at least 2 or 3 CEOs who have a fun tale to share about how they made a smart COVID pivot.
Great. All right, Prashant and Jackie, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're going to be seeing a number of exciting companies, pitch here in just a few minutes. Obviously, we should all be focused around having a great pitch, but inherently we're all focused around building, great companies. Any advice that you'd have for them coming out of the pitch and as they, consider building a company in these marketplaces?
Well, I can just say a few words that I think are probably more short-term focused, and certainly build off what Neil and Jonathan were saying about companies being flexible and really pivoting to, Neil, I think you said survival. And I think that is really one of the keys that that unlock, funding in this environment. We used to talk a lot about this flight to quality that had been happening, which were fewer companies raising larger rounds. Now I think what we're seeing is like any company that can show progress, whether that's through a pivot like Neil mentioned, or I think what's really important from Jonathan's comments about, putting together a plan and then actually executing towards that plan. Like if you can do those things, it puts you in a different category than the majority of companies that were impacted by COVID. And I think you'll see this in some of the funding trends that that group of companies that are, some of them are like thriving right now, but the ones that are surviving and hitting plans or hitting, COVID adjusted plans are getting funding. And, big kind of coastal funds that had traditionally been writing, 10, 20, $30 million checks are starting to pay attention to those, because I think they think it's less risky to write, $20 million checks than a $20 million check right now. I think you'll start to see those opportunities open up for companies like that. So as you think about coming out of, the pitches specifically, using the plans that you lay out in front of investors as really being able to execute against them, I think that goes a long way in, kind of showing credibility as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, EJ, the only thing I'd add, I agree with what Jackie said. I think, nobody knows what the kind of benchmarks are going to be coming out of 2020. Like historically, companies will look for triple, double in early years for software, or in a marketplace, they want to see a certain kind of growth trajectory. So I think the reality is, we're all going to kind of adjust and see what 2020 benchmarks look like and what investors want. I think, and Jonathan touched on this a little bit, if you're a B2B software company selling to enterprises, your sales cycles have probably dried up a little bit, and the pipeline may not be as liquid as it was. And so thinking about doubling down on product, shaving some expenses, and kind of punting on your 2020 plan to 2021 is what we've seen a lot of companies do. And I think investors will give you credit for being smart during a time where selling was difficult to double down on product. In other cases, if your business is COVID friendly, doubling down on growth and kind of accelerating that, I think is smart. So I think investors are going to look for, this is an unpredictable crisis. How did you respond? What did you do to cope with it? And how did you come out of it stronger, weaker, or the same? And we'll kind of evaluate businesses that way.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I would say in all of our work, coming in this summer, I think somehow I expected that things were going to be a little bit different than normal. I think that I expected that people wouldn't see as much opportunity, whether that's, in the entrepreneurial space or existing small business owners, working on the South and West side. Everyone sees opportunity. That doesn't change. The types of opportunity, the scale, the ways in which we grow, that does continue to morph and, change in this crisis, but just an incredible amount still of opportunity and optimism out there. So definitely matches. All right. So I know we've only got about 5 minutes before we're going to, begin to transition to the main stage of our activities. And so if you are with us today, don't worry, we're going to be getting to some live demo pitches from some amazing companies. But I do want to go ahead and just give some opportunity here for kind of closing remarks, and we'll be hearing more from each of you as we're going through the judging process. But some actionable steps, things that people are interested in the tech marketplace, opportunities, things they should be looking at, attending next week. Jonathan signed up for different events. What would you say? We've got a lot of folks on the line that are potentially new to the larger Chicago ecosystem, because this series of events historically for the Polsky Center and for the university has been kind of the culmination of a lot of work that happens over the summer and the previous academic year with a number of our startups, and a huge way in which we start to engage with folks that are coming from around the world to engage with the different entrepreneurial ecosystems that we help to support. So any comments for kind of the onboarding segment of our population and how to get tied into what's happening when we can't all be virtually networking or sharing a coffee quite as easily? Jonathan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So, I mean, I try and find opportunity in everything, right? So this is actually a great time because everything has gone virtual now. So all of the things which you might not have been able to make because of logistics or some programming that was happening other side of town or in a different town even, you can now tune in for. So all of this kind of format is at your fingertips now. And there's so much content online, whether it's YouTube videos, blogs, you name it, like there is so much educational material out there. And then Polsky, is obviously doing a great job at, shepherding people through the process and like really, guiding people, because it's, especially if you're a first-time founder, it's very hard. The learning curve is super steep. So yeah, Midwest Tech Connect is next week. It's too late to join this time, but we will do it again. If you sign up for emails at midwest.tech, you'll hear about it. And we're going to keep trying to do some programming. We're actually trying to do a content partnership with Polsky. So we're going to sort of keep spreading good, actionable content to people to help them through these very, very early stages. And then we'll try and serve up some easy investor connections as well.
Jackie, anything you want to add?
I'll do a brief plug again for Chicago Blend. We have some fun stuff down the pipeline. I think also an interesting part of these times is the ability to sort of reach anyone right now, and they're slightly more likely to be free or willing to engage. So I've certainly been having more interesting conversations LinkedIn with, not literally LinkedIn, but on social media, primarily Twitter. I know there's some other places that folks get a lot of tech news, but if you find some folks around the Chicago ecosystem, and it's pretty obvious in Chicago because everyone sort of interacts with everyone in some way, and then just start engaging in conversations or asking questions. I feel like now has been a time where people are much more willing to engage online with folks, and it can be a good way to start a relationship.
Thanks so much, Jackie. All right, Neil?
I'll keep it fast because I know we're less than a minute.
You're good. You're good. We got time.
So yeah, well, I'll say a couple of things. One is I think now more than ever, there's a huge opportunity to put special attention on underrepresented founders and giving them the encouragement, the support, not just mentorship, but also checks, the resources that they need to get started. So that's an intentional effort. Just personally for me, and I know Jackie and along with everyone else here is involved in different things to do that. So if you know anybody who has uncertainty or needs some guidance or support and wants somebody that they can relate to, our job is to connect you to those people or be those people. That's number one. And I would say number two, and this is more general, and I'm saying this coming off of evaluating hundreds of companies over the past few months for Techstars Chicago, which I would encourage all of you all to consider applying for if you're at an early stage and you think we can help. Our next program starts in July, so applications would open up early next year. Get real, don't hide behind decks. Don't hide behind research and numbers and financials. Like, get real with the customer, prove to us and prove to yourself that you actually know who your customer is. at the very least, and ideally you can sell to them at some point. I think there's still this, Chicago gets this rep of being like revenue focused and needing to have more evidence than the coast and whatnot. And it's easier to fundraise in other places. And I totally understand and respect that energy and where that's coming from. But as somebody who's been in the investment scene in Chicago for almost 15 years, I got to say, like, our businesses are sturdy because they know how to make money. So I just get good at that. And if you're not sure how to do it, come talk to me and I'll tell you how. I feel like I'm getting pretty good at giving people that kind of feedback at this point. So looking forward to the pitches today.
That's great. Thank you, Neil. Prashant?
No, I mean, I agree a lot with what's been said. I think, people I think are reflecting a lot during this time because they're reassessing like whether we need an office, like how have I been working with people historically? Where do I need to be geographically? And so I think that's also caused reflection on a lot of other things like, oh, wow, a lot of my checks are going to people in my network or people that look a certain way. And so I think putting a spotlight on that and having people reflect on processes, how they meet people, how they write checks, how they evaluate deals is all very healthy and very good. So I'm glad it's kind of a shock to the ecosystem and people are kind of doing that evaluation, and we can all do a better job of that. And we shouldn't stop just because the pandemic ends. We should kind of keep that momentum going in the future and keep reflecting and evaluating ourselves.
I think that's wonderful. So, and it really does match, one of the things that I help to oversee at the university is our larger outreach to the south and west sides of Chicago, kind of looking beyond the university's, exact footprint here. And it's amazing actually in this time because you can reach so many more people, and you're seeing that, people that have had businesses that, were very much, hamster, brick and mortar retail locations now are engaged and growing and getting access to content in a way that I have never seen before. And it's been one of those real pleasant surprises of this, very difficult time, because I do think that it also has the potential for, additional layers of growth coming out of this very difficult time, because there's a lot of great businesses out there that also haven't been felt connected to some of the entrepreneurial ecosystems historically that hopefully are feeling more so now. So lots of great things ahead. All right, with that, I am going to turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Chrissy Ritter, who helps to run the Polsky Accelerator Program. Chrissy and I first started running this program, was it 3 years ago, Chrissy? Something like that. And I have to say that it's quietly both of our favorite programs to be involved with historically, because so many amazing people and so much intensity that happens. And it would not have happened this year without Chrissy's incredible leadership and so many other people at the Polsky Center. So Chrissy, I'll go and turn it over to you and the rest of today's events.
EJ, thank you, friend. And thank you to all of our judges for our panel today. EJ was not wrong. I am not quiet about how much I love the Accelerator Program. I will tell everybody and their grandmother that it's my favorite thing that I get to do. I'm incredibly proud of these teams. It has been quite a summer, and I'm excited to launch into their demos and their pitches. So with that, Ali and gaapRT, are you ready to go?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Masood, and I am the founder and CEO of gaapRT. And today I am going to be tackling, or we are going to be tackling, one of the most entertaining subjects known to mankind, accounting. There we go. As you know, every profitable company must deal with accounting. For the smaller companies, there's the day-to-day bookkeeping, preparing financial statements, account reconciliations, all of which can be covered in a single undergraduate textbook. But larger companies also have to deal with more complex subjects, such as revenue recognition or stock-based compensation. Since these subjects are very complex, the guidance on how to account for these subjects is thousands of pages. The current process is that an accountant spends a significant amount of time researching the guidance and then writing an accounting position paper on how the company is going to account for the matter. the company's auditors, such as the Big Four, basically approve these memos. So how did we get started? In a past life, I was an auditor with Ernst & Young. I reviewed the accounting position papers / memos prepared by my clients. Many of them struggled with doing the extensive research and writing these memos. I left EY as a manager and then went on to the client side where I prepared some of these accounting position papers and then I struggled. I've played around with software programming throughout my life. So I thought, you know what, if TurboTax can prepare a complex tax return by asking a series of questions, why can't we do the same for accounting memos? Long story short, that's how gaapRT came into being. During the course of this accelerator, I started working with a team of software developers to develop a solution that basically asks a series of questions and then drafts a technical memo. We're converting the 4 to 5 hours spent in doing the research and the accounting into 45 minutes. It's easy to audit, it's cheaper, and it also gives you the option to evaluate different interpretations of the GAAP. There is no other software-based solution like this at the moment. Our competitor, it's basically thousands of pages of PDFs and accounting consultants who can interpret those PDFs. We have the long-term potential to address a $10 billion accounting and tax consulting industry. However, initially, we're focused more on the accounting side. Our initial target customers are publicly traded companies subject to SEC accounting requirements, and about 5,000 private companies which are required to have audited financial statements. We believe we can charge around $46,000 on average for a fully developed tool based on the current spend by these companies, giving us the opportunity to generate over $400 million in annual recurring revenue. Our target customers have a similar background to myself. In fact, if I was not the founder of gaapRT, I would definitely be one of its customers. We've conducted over 15 detailed customer discovery interviews of these companies, and we've learned that the struggle is real. We've also learned about new features that we can add to our solution. Our MVP or prototype is live, and we've demonstrated it to 2 pilot customers. They like the solution and absolutely agree that it can generate value. However, it is an MVP, and now we're developing a fully functional solution. As I mentioned earlier, I am a former Big Four CPA, Chicago Booth MBA, and I've worked around this issue for over 10 years, both as a preparer and as an auditor. I understand the process, I know the professionals, and most importantly, I've lived the problem. I've had success developing the MVP with an external team, but I'd like to develop a fully functional model now. So I'm actively looking for a CTO to join our team. I would like to engage with 2 technical accounting experts to help us expand the subject that we address. Which brings me to the ask. We are currently bootstrapped and on track to have 1 subject fully developed by December. But I would like to get your advice on how to obtain $5,000 in seed funding for 2021, which will help us develop more subjects and hire technical experts. We're also looking for introductions to advisors and potential customers, which would be CFOs and controllers. With that, I'll open it up to questions. Thank you, and I'd like to offer special thanks to the Polsky team for their mentoring and encouragement throughout this process. Thanks.
All right, I think Neil has his hand raised first. We'll go ahead and let him kick us off with Q&A.
Thanks. Congrats on the pitch. Good job. My first question is centered around your customer discovery insights. So for these 15 interviews, what were the key insights that came from that, and how are you planning to translate that beyond your MVP? Then I had questions about the MVP too, but I wanted to start
that's
there.
fine. So good question. Initially, I thought it was just going to be a Q&A platform. I would ask questions, and then we would provide answers. So conducted customer discovery, and we learned some new things, and I'll go a little accounting on you over here. But when you do the research, a lot of people don't understand these technical terms. So we actually put in a system where when you ask the question, you hover over a button, it gives you the definition of these technical terms. One of them is bifurcation, really exciting term. Other things where sometimes people don't know what the questions, why the questions are being asked. So we got actually a thing on the side that tells you why we're asking the question. So learned a lot of insights, and then we gave it to our pilot customers, learned some new things over here, but I think I kind of answered your questions.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'm curious about like what from those conversations would signal to you that they would switch to gaapRT from whatever they're currently tolerating or utilizing. So if you could help me understand what that switch moment looks like for that, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so that moment, actually, there was a eureka moment that we had. So we, usually one of these customers spent about 4 or 5 hours with the revenue recognition memo, sometimes days, preparing these memos, doing the research. When we did our pilot, we focused on a very simple subject, which is segment reporting, something public companies deal with. We did the whole process where you filled out basically forms or answered questions, and then hit a button and you got this memo that's 5 pages with all the technical references in there. And they're like, wow, it will take me hours to write this memo, get the grammar right, but I'm done with this. And this, in our case, it took 10 minutes, but it'll actually probably take like 40 minutes to do it.
Thank you.
MVP. Yeah. Hey, Jonathan. I think you have a question.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, great pitch. I thought in 5 minutes you sort of gave a good overview. On the value proposition, I mean, $46,000 average contract value. I think you're looking at 40 to 80.
Yeah.
You're communicating the value prop right now is you save, instead of 4 hours, it's 45 minutes, which I'm sure adds up over time. But is there like a hard ROI there where people can think, okay, I'm actually saving money, or is it more just you're making the people already doing the work's lives easier?
So we're actually offering 3 things. Mm-hmm. First is less time, 4 to 5 hours to 45 minutes, just easy to say as well. It kind of explains it. Mm-hmm. The second is there's actually risks associated with it. Like if you get the guidance wrong or do you have an accounting error, it's for public companies, it's not only reputation, it's your stock price, right? Mm-hmm. So we actually reference all the code. My slides are stuck, otherwise, oh, there we go. So we actually reference all the code that we're using in our tool. We tell you what the questions are, and that makes it easy to audit for you to give the memo to the auditors, and makes it easy to audit. The other things is, and we get asked this more by executives than accountants, is that there are different interpretations of accounting, right? So sometimes you want to make the interpretations work best for you. So we actually offer all the interpretations that that we can possibly think of, which are legal. And that adds some value as well, where you're like, okay, can I recognize revenue on this? Well, based on X, Y, and Z, you've got these 3 options. Maybe you can. I hope that helps.
Great, thanks.
I can't see people's raised hands, but
I might have. Do we have time, Chrissy, or no?
Yes, Jackie. Please jump in.
Thanks.
Hi, Jackie.
Great pitch and great to meet you. Question on how you think about your user base, like who uses this within the organization, like how deep does it go, and then how frequently are people leveraging the system, and if you see that evolving over time, how does that evolve over time?
It's a very it depends question, but to answer your first part of your question. Basically, if the CFO has an issue or they have a transaction and it goes to the controller and says, look, we're going to have to account for this. How are we going to account for this? Or if the CFO might says, how do we structure this so the accounting works in our favor? And the controller goes over to our system, spends some time on it, figures out and prepares a memo saying, this is how we're going to account on it. It's going to impact your gross margin by X if you do it this way, or by Y if you do it this way. That's the first thing. Otherwise, it's just that you have a revenue transaction and your accountants your auditors want to make sure you do it right. So you put it into the system and you get a memo. This memo is audited by the auditors. So it's one of these 2. And so we're selling it to the controllers, the accounting managers, the technical accountants at companies. And then I guess the primary decision maker would be the CFO in this case. Forgot about the second part of your question. I'm sorry. Or was that it?
I think if it evolves over time, but I think it's probably staying within that that cross section of people.
Yeah. we're
How-
helping you. Yeah, go ahead.
How did you come up with pricing? Jonathan kind of got a little bit to this, but was it purely like, here's how much hours are billed for, and so multiply time savings, or like how do you think about pricing?
Yeah, good question. So I'm in this field. I actually negotiate contracts for similar products, not exactly the same for my company. So some of the common ones are Lease Query. It's actually a lease accounting software that we negotiated. You pay about 10 to 14,000 or 20,000 based on your leases. Kept that in mind, but that's only leases. There's a really company I admire called Workiva that helps you file SEC guidance. And we negotiated at 100, but it could go up to 120,000. So kept that point in mind. Technical accountants generally start with a salary of 120, go up to 140. So we think we're in a perfect place at 40,000, but it'll probably go up as we offer more content.
Awesome. That's all we have time for. Great work, Ali. Thank you
you
for your presentation. All right, Vito, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Yuki, and we are Vital, a hiring network for blue-collar workers and employers. Oops. Small to medium-sized employers who traditionally hire for blue-collar jobs or labor-intensive hourly jobs spends up to $395 and 32 days to fill a position. That's a lot of time and money spent, and especially time-consuming, also because employers receive a lot of unqualified applications. And also, time is money. On the worker side, the workers are desperate for finding jobs. They mass send their resume through channels like Indeed, but less than 50% of them actually land the jobs. The rest seeks to attempt to find job advice and referrals. They have tried using private Facebook groups, but the lack of professional profile make it ineffective in building a meaningful and reliable connections. They lack the right connections and the network to land the right jobs. Vital provides the solutions to these problems by building our own professional LinkedIn-like network for blue-collar workers that employers can also tap into. 90% of the blue-collar workers and employers that we interviewed expressed that they prefer referral over job boards like Indeed. So on the employer side, our integrated referral feature allows employers to have more qualified candidates by allowing workers to share and refer others within their own networks. Together with our rating feature, employers need just choose the top pick among the ranked candidates, eliminating any needs to go through every single candidate, drastically cutting down the search cost. On the worker side, the networks allows them to first gain more referrals and access informal job opportunities that are traditionally not available on boards like Job or like Indeed. Second, they can seek for advice from past workers at a certain jobs. And finally, they have the opportunity to talk to employers and ask relevant questions. Now, let Ren talk you through our business model.
Thank you, Yuki. Our business model is simple. We charge employers $10 per week per job posting and provide an additional service called Vital Boost that charges employers a performance-based fee to tap into our network through targeted and featured job postings. For our go-to-market strategy, we realized that amassing the worker network is critical to us providing value to the employers. And as such, we first eliminate the need of acquiring employers by scraping existing job portals to artificially induce demand on our platform. We then take a local neighborhood by neighborhood approach, starting in Hyde Park, so that we can convert physical communities and traditional word of mouth into growth of our worker network. We amplify this by collaborating with community organizations and holding skill workshops, all meanwhile simultaneously acquiring small to medium-sized blue-collar heavy employers using free trials until we reach a critical mass of workers to achieve the necessary network effects. For our market size, we know that COVID is a reality that we cannot ignore. So given that, there are currently 2.5 million monthly blue-collar job openings in the United States. Multiply that by 12, you get 30 million yearly job openings. Multiply that again by $40, the average value of a job posting on a platform, and we arrive at a market size of $1.2 billion. Based on our competitors out there, we think that we can obtain at least 33% of this market, making our market 400 million simply from our job posting.
Besides LinkedIn and Facebook and Jobcase, we are the only one focusing on hiring network for blue-collar workforce. Currently, we are launching our apps and finish developing our website by 1st of October with the goal of reaching 50 employers and 1,000 workers by the end of this year. We also have 300 workers on our beta waitlist and 50 beta sign up for our closed beta app. Why are we the right team to do this? We all have great passion for entrepreneurship. Ren and I have both had experience developing startups for the past 3 years. Phong has extensive product development experience, and both Eve and Jerome each have over 4 years of software engineering experience. Our ask is connection with hiring managers and companies that largely hire blue-collar workers. We'd also like to connect with community organizations such as vocational colleges and community centers to seek for potential partnership. We would also like to connect with anyone who has experience in building networks. Thank you very much. We are Vital. We harness the power of network to drive blue-collar workforce. Now we are open for questions.
Yep, I'll take Prashant's question first.
Thanks, guys. Great job. You got through a lot there. My question is about, specializing within the blue collar category. Like blue collar is a huge market. There's lots of employers, lots of different kinds of employers, lots of different verticals and sectors and skills on the worker side. Have you guys thought about picking a particular sector or vertical versus just keeping it broad as you try to build up kind of local network effects for workers and employers?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. I'll let Feng, our CMO, answer that question.
Hello. So we actually, just to give a background, we started out in the events industry in the very beginning. That's where we first identified the problem to begin with. But due to COVID, we had to pivot a little bit there. After doing more research and customer discovery interviews throughout the summer, we identified 3 main industries we'd like to focus on in the near future. Those will be delivery, warehouse, and retail. And that's a combination of just business activity due to COVID, as well as just accessibility for us as well to target that space using our go-to-market strategy.
Sure. Neil, I'll take your question next.
Cool. Can you all tell me a little bit about the 3 community organizations you have using the product currently and like how that's going?
Mm-hmm. So to clarify there too, is that we have reached out to various community organizations over the past 6 months to also pilot in a way what kind of skills workshops we could do and how they would be received in that sense. So we haven't had a relationship with them yet in terms of a sales approach, but we have had agreements to hold workshops to continue just like getting to know the worker base much better, as well as just in the future promoting the product when it is fully launched.
Okay, so I guess for a quick follow-up, like what are the plans for experimentation, MVP wise, otherwise? I just want to know when this starts to like hit the ground and like we get real interactions with potential customers.
Mm-hmm. So for that, we're currently in our beta phase. So we've been just doing lots of internal testing in terms of just making sure that there's no big bugs that could destroy the entire user experience. We have 300 people signed up just to waiting to use the beta platform from some of the other marketing strategies that we have had. Our full launch will be October 1st, where we will hoping that the app will have most of its core features ready to use. And that's when we fully launch the product. And so we will hold these different workshops, hopefully online on Zoom, so we can reach more people and target the people for that there.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Jonathan, we'll take your question.
Yeah, I had a question just on the go-to-market as well, actually, in terms of, it sounds like you want to scrape the existing job portals, which, if you choose to do that, you can obviously do that. But then you have a whole bunch of inventory that's sort of out there already. Given the whole point of this is like people referring their own network, have you considered, finding one big employer that already has a bunch of blue collar workers that could activate them to be referring people, and then as soon as like their needs are met, then go and find other employers? Like basically, instead of just trying to build one side of the marketplace really fast, sort of trying to build that, they call it liquidity quality. So supply and demand is better in match as you go.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So we have considered doing that. We've been reaching out to certain people to connect with them, which is also why it's part of our ask to just reach some of these larger major companies. The problem is that because this is a two-sided market, we haven't built up a significant worker base yet in order to be able to persuade employers to sign up onto a platform yet. And that's why we've been aiming to just build a product market fit, like especially on the worker side, building it up by artificially creating a demand. And then by using the large worker base, then hopefully to persuade other employers to join the platform, much larger ones.
All right, thanks team. Great work, Bido. We
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have our Polsky Accelerator team, Lighten. Alexandra and Grace, are y'all ready?
I'm Alexandra Coys, and I'm the founder and CEO of Life. We remake the funeral into a personalized celebration of life. We make the planning process easier. I hope none of you here today have ever had to plan a funeral, but if you have, you know that it can be miserable. My first experience was 3 years ago when my uncle passed away. This was my uncle, and yes, those are blueberries in his nose. He was the kind of guy who was always the life of the party, and that's what I wanted to remember about him. But when I walked into the funeral home, I saw something that didn't fit his personality at all. So instead, I planned a celebration of life in his favorite place with his favorite people and the photos and items from his life that reminded us of him. Afterwards, I found out that more and more families are opting out of the funeral home experience and taking on the planning burden to remember their loved one's life in a different way. That's why Lighten is developing a modern alternative to the traditional funeral home. We're building a digital planning platform that allows families to arrange cremation and choose a personalized celebration of life package arranged by our team and delivered through our vendor partners, all without entering the funeral home. We already have traction with our minimum viable product. We've helped 15 families plan celebrations of life and generated $12,000 of revenue. 3 of these celebrations were held in person, and 12 were held online for families who wanted to honor their loved one while social distancing. For this online memorial service option, we were featured on WGN's morning news program this past spring. We also won second place in this year's New Venture Challenge and have raised $370,000 of funding to date. And now I'll turn it over to our head of marketing, Grace, to tell you more about our opportunity.
We have a significant market opportunity in a large and highly fragmented industry. Within the $17 billion funeral services industry, we will target those who are already looking to opt out of the traditional funeral home experience by choosing direct cremation. This refers to cremations that occur with no services or ceremony at a funeral home. Given that customers are already opting out of the traditional funeral home, it's clear that Lighten has the opportunity to deliver a fundamentally better customer experience. Compared to funeral homes, our offering is digital first, with a variety of location options for uplifting celebrations. Other online competitors simply offer direct cremation facilitation, or they aggregate educational resources and information on vendors, but ultimately refer people back to the actual funeral home for the actual arrangements. No one else is prepared to disrupt the funeral home industry by owning the end-to-end customer experience in a digital and scalable way. Now, we must ensure that we're in the right place to find customers at their time of need. Currently, we're focused on continuing our success with paid search, which has generated 60% of our customers to date. Referrals have been key for our organic growth. Each ceremony is a marketing opportunity for us with event attendees, and there are an average of 130 attendees per ceremony. Moving forward, we're focused on building relationships with end-of-life care providers like hospice centers and nursing homes. So, how do we make our money? Lighten provides different packages of services at different price points for a variety of customer needs. Here are the economics of the 2 channels we're offering today. On average, we charge over $1,000 for our digital ceremonies, and we're able to achieve a 56% margin. Our in-person ceremonies are priced in line with funeral homes' full-service cremation rates. Passing along some of the revenue to our vendor partners, we achieve a 42% margin. Our digital services are national. We'll roll out our in-person services market by market. Our growth will be fueled by adding new markets, increasing market penetration, and automating our processes. With this growth, we expect to reach $52 million in revenue by 2024. And now, Alexandra will close us out with a little bit about our team and next steps.
Thanks, Grace. We have the right team to continue to drive this forward. I have 7 years of experience in strategy development, customer service operations, and systems implementation. And my team brings a wide variety of experience in marketing, finance, and end-of-life care. We have an industry advisor with over 30 years of experience as a licensed funeral director and a partnership with software development agency Think Nimble, who's building out our planning platform while we recruit for our internal tech team. Our ask for the audience today is twofold. First, we're expanding our team, and we're looking to recruit individuals with backgrounds in marketing, finance, and operations. Next, we'll soon be preparing for our next round of funding. We're targeting a raise of $2 million, closing by the end of the second quarter of next year. Thank you. We're Lighten, and we're creating a more meaningful way to celebrate a life lived. And now we'll take any questions that you have.
All right, Neil, I see you're the first one up.
All right. So I would love to jump in to get a little bit more fidelity on KPIs here. Like, what are you all measuring week to week or month to month to really signify progress?
Yeah, so the main KPIs that we're measuring are our customer volumes and our marketing metrics. Grace, would you like to talk a little bit more about the marketing metrics?
Yeah, of course. So we're looking at, of course, customer acquisition costs. As we noted, we're investing in paid search. So more granular on the paid search level, we're looking at cost per click, impressions, click-through rates, bounce rates, et cetera, to get a better understanding of how that channel is working for us.
So if there were one single thing that you all would focus on as a team, you have your weekly meeting and you point to it and you're like, this is the thing that if we move this, it's going to make the difference. What is that?
Customer volume.
Got it. Thank you.
Next, Jackie.
Yeah, great pitch, guys. Can you talk about your build up to contribution margin and what goes into some of those service costs?
Yeah, Carly, do you want to talk about the build up to the contribution margin?
Yeah, sure. So basically we look at on the variable cost front, we look at the customer services cost, which is like the personnel we need to carry out all the services. And also we look at the vendor cost, which is like the piece we need to pass on to our third-party vendors. And then on the operating cost front, then it's mainly our customer acquisition cost, which we estimate will be around $250. Yeah, and that's how we come up to the contribution margin that we got to around 40%.
So do you guys think of yourselves, and by the way, this isn't a trick question, but do you think of yourselves more of a tech-enabled service or a marketplace? Like, how would you describe the model?
Tech-enabled service. As it's less of a free-for-all marketplace for vendors to join, and more of a curated pool of vendor partners that we've decided to bring into our network and connect our customers directly with those vendors.
Well, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, hey. So it seems like, you're really sort of like a virtual funeral home,
Yes.
without brick and mortar. Yeah, okay. So I spent the first year of my career becoming an expert in the death care sector. So it was a long time ago now. So things might have changed, but yeah, we were trying to buy a couple of businesses in my private equity days. This sector is known for people not really shopping around. People typically just go to the provider they always go to, their family's gone to the local one, the recommendation. So what have you been able to do to sort of prove out people's willingness to engage with this solution when you're not the trusted, been there forever provider?
Yeah, and I would say our response to that is twofold. One, I think that is what we're hearing from customers is that dynamic of the local community funeral home is less and less true as families become more dispersed across the country, and as people become less traditional when it comes to how they are commemorating the end of life. For example, religious traditions have become much less traditional. The second is that COVID has really given us an entry point into the marketplace that would have been much harder to get without it, because families are searching for alternate solutions. And in a way, they've been forced, just as they have in many areas of life, to think about how to do things differently. And we're connecting with a lot of families that way as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Prashant?
Yeah, great job. My question is about, in a post-COVID world, what do you guys think is your kind of secret sauce, or what's defensible here? If somebody wanted to start Lighten 2, and provide some of the same services and vendors that you did, what's going to be special and defensible for you guys going forward?
Yeah, we think about that. We think about our defensible advantage with 3 components. One is that we're doing the initial legwork to establish curated vendor relationships that are much different than the ones a typical funeral home would offer, and a robust platform that typically wouldn't make sense for a local community funeral home to invest in. In addition, we consider ourselves as, intending to provide best-in-class customer experience and generating brand awareness that will make, with these 3 components, more difficult for competitors to enter.
All right, thanks team. That'll be it for Lighten. Great presentation. Vazian, we've got you on deck next.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ari Perlin, the co-founder and CEO of Vazian, a medical software company that diagnoses chest pain in the ER. 8 million Americans head to emergency rooms annually with chest pain as their chief complaint. A complex symptom, chest pain can be an indicator for a range of conditions from heartburn to heartache to a heart attack. Every chest pain case must be rigorously tested because it can indicate heart disease, the cause of death for 1 out of 3 Americans. Chest pain is not only deadly, but costly. A leader in the ER malpractice and defensive medicine, chest pain is the most expensive complaint in the ER across the US, and if a patient is admitted, can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $12,000 per day. This is problematic as about half of these patients are admitted, but less than 10% are determined to have actually needed a hospitalization. Vazian's patent-pending solution rapidly diagnoses chest pain in the ER by combining our methodologies with clinical observations and patient data. Our statistical AI algorithms are based on 20 years of proven DNA forensic interpretation methods accepted in courts and labs across the entire world. Vazian will be using a software as a medical device business model, a quickly growing industry that has recently erupted. Similar to software as a service, software as a medical device relies on software implementation and subscription models to generate revenue, with price increasing based on the number of product users, software customizations, and upgrades. A truly emerging market, estimates show this industry's value growing from 18 billion to over 86 billion over the next 6 years. Based on the number of emergency departments and ER physicians, our initial chest pain target market is over $500 million annually. To add to this, there are incredibly strong tailwinds in favor of healthcare AI algorithms, with over 40 algorithms being approved by the FDA over the past 2 years. Also, in a critical milestone this past month, Medicare agreed to begin reimbursing an autonomous AI algorithm, meaning that in the near future, every time diagnostic AI is run in clinical settings, providers can be reimbursed. And now I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Danny Asilian, our strategic partner and current chief resident of UChicago's ER.
Thanks, Ari. This is Rachel, and she's 58 years old, and she came into my ER a bit nervous, complaining of chest pain. I wasn't sure if she was having a heart attack or something less critical, so I examined her and did some blood tests, but I still couldn't figure out whether or not I should admit her or send her home. Next slide. So, like every other ER doc across the country, I took out my phone and I opened up the heart score. And I put in her numbers and it calculated her score, which was 5. The score said I should admit her, but based off of what Rachel was telling me, I didn't quite feel like it was the best decision for her. Next slide. So I turned to Vazian, and in a heartbeat, I knew I was right. Every doctor can read a heat map, and the reddest column shows the best matching diagnosis. For Rachel, this was on the far right. Unstable angina, a far less critical diagnosis, far away from heart attack, over on the left. Vazian had considered 25 different patient markers on the far left for 6 different chest pain conditions all at once. But I still wanted to know why Rachel sending home was the right decision, and thankfully, unlike other AI, Vazian actually shows me how it thinks. So I clicked on one of the markers, substernal chest pain, to ask Vazian why this was red for Rachel, and it answers it here. The chest pain probabilities on the left show me how stable angina differed from a healthy person, and on the right, the tall green bar convinced me. Rachel only had stable angina, not a heart attack. I evaluated all the possibilities that not only that I cared about, but the main one that Rachel cared about in an objective, fluid manner in a matter of seconds. So I sent her home to her family. Next slide. And this is our team. And between Ari's previous work at 2 Fortune 500 companies and myself, we have a wealth of knowledge in business and healthcare, and our CSO has a multitude of patents in biotech. Next slide. And moving forward, we need your help. We're looking for ER docs such as myself to collaborate with us and validate the prototype. And we're looking for both large and small institutions to help collaborate with us by providing anonymous patient data on those coming to their ER with chest pain so we can help refine the Vasian product. Thanks so much for having us. And now we'll take any questions from the audience.
All right. So let's go to participants. Neil.
Sure. So great job with this pitch. Really compelling, especially with the story towards the end there and the context. I'm actually curious, what resistance have you all experienced in working with other MDs or trying to, get them to adopt this or try it out?
So I can take that. In terms of, healthcare is a very slow moving industry, right? No one doctor wants to jump in and take a risk in terms of, oh, we're going to go after this type of technology could help a patient, but they want to see lots of validation and studies supporting that before they go in. So it's really less about resistance from our technology standpoint in terms of like not wanting to use it. It's more about proving through academic papers and clinical studies that it should be used. And usually that is how things just get accepted in this world. So
I'm guessing they say no. If you like, somebody has said no to you at some point, right?
We haven't asked yet.
Oh, okay. So you're looking for people to work with, but you haven't got that resistance yet. Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
And to answer to that piece, no, we do have doctors who, once our prototype is at a certain place, they are more than willing to put it in their institutions to test.
What's the timeline for that?
We're hoping 3 months. That's what we're looking at. So,
okay. Cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem. Jonathan?
Are there sort of analogous solutions, perhaps solving other problems where this feels like if I'm a busy ER doctor thinking to use this one particular tool in this one particular use case, might just in terms of workflow adoption, I mean, are there other things you can point to where this has already happened, or is this still a thing to be proven in your case?
Yeah, absolutely. Even though Danny's an ER doctor, I'll take this one too. So every ER doctor has this thing on their phone called MD Calc. It's an app that allows them to calculate risk scores and do risk stratifications for various like situations of presentations that they come across when doing clinical practices. And every single doctor who's in ER, when they have chest pain come in, takes out their phone and puts into the phone the different everything like troponin levels, whether they're suspicious of in terms of their history. So you actually already have the doctors doing this every single time with a tool that's really not very advanced. It's more like it's about as basic tree logic, and very small amounts of linear regression. There's not much there, but that's what they all use. So we do know that they already use these tools.
Got it. So you're really coming in with a better mousetrap to displace that in their workflow.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay, great. Thanks.
Prashant?
Yeah, I'm curious about what kind of liability or risk you guys are taking on, if the diagnosis is wrong or leads to something catastrophic happening.
Sure. So I'm going to actually turn that over to Danny, using the analogy of how doctors just use tools in general.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it's still going to end up being up to the physician, like myself. So the risk is going to be on us. But what we want to use this for Vasian is as just a tool. So at the end of the day, we don't want it making the decision for the physician. We want it to actually assist the physician in making that decision and them being comfortable with them making that decision. So something like the HART score is something that we've used and it's been validated so that we're comfortable using it. But there are times where, like you can see in the presentation, where we don't necessarily agree with it and we want something more objective. So a patient here, like Rachel, who was a score of 5, should be admitted. There are other people who have a score of 2, and because of the subjective nature of that score, it would say send them home. But then I'm looking at them and there are all these other variables that weren't taken into consideration. And I'm like, this patient needs to be admitted because this wasn't taken into consideration. And I only used 5 things for an individual who actually thinks they're having a heart attack and can end up being something very serious. So in terms of liability, it's still going to end up being on us and our clinical acumen, but putting this into play gives us something more objective and something more refined that we can actually use.
Okay, are there any more questions? Doesn't look like it.
Wonderful. Vazian, great work. Thanks for your
Andrew.
pitch today.
Thanks.
All right, last but not least, we have our team Epic Home Hero.
So my wife and I bought a new house and everything was perfect, except that we had this 250 square foot red deck that spanned the entire backside of the house that needed to be repainted. I called 8 local painters and I got 0 calls back. I tried a bunch of apps and I got no resolution. All in all, I chased down a single professional for a job for over 2 weeks. And I hear stories like this all the time. And I know we're not alone because frustrated homeowners turned to HomeAdvisor to the tune of 25 million projects last year. My name's Don Garino, and I'm the co-founder of Epic Home Hero, or Epic for short. We are a mobile marketplace for home services where pros chase you. So how does it work? Well, first, a homeowner takes a brief video of their problem. We send that video as well as a rough location to professionals, and they provide an estimate and earliest availability. And then you take a look at that information and select the pro you want to hire. Simple. Unlike our biggest competitors, HomeAdvisor and Thumbtack, who make you play 20 questions, provide little to no price discovery, and oftentimes just give your contact info to pros, hoping for the best, Epic provides resolution with just a brief video. We use natural language processing to fulfill the matchmaking function, putting the burden on AI instead of the homeowner, and we let you know who's available to do the work and provide multiple estimates. So what's our early customer feedback been? Well, for homeowners, they love that it's low effort. They like that it saves money. We just saved a young lady $800 on a new floor install, and they love that it saves time. But this has been what's really shocked us, is that professionals are head over heels for this product. They love the fact that there's remote diagnostics, so no longer do they have to drive to the job site, do a diagnostic, provide an estimate for work that they may not even ultimately win. They can do it all right from their phone. Additionally, the video format of these leads has significantly higher purchase intent than text leads through HomeAdvisor. And finally, there's no sign up, login, or app download, creating as frictionless a process as possible. And where are we at? So over the past 5 months, with the help of the Polsky Accelerator, we've taken this from an idea to a fully functional product. We soft launched in Eastern Iowa just over a month ago. And since then, we've onboarded 20 professionals and are processing about 3 jobs a week. And get this, we just had our first repeat customer. Looking over to the right, we did 2 jobs in July, we did 8 in August, and we're going to do even more in September. So what's our revenue model? So matches cost professionals between $5 and $200 depending on the size of the job, but the average is about $65. And $65 represents about 4% of the average job. Taking that 4% fee times the 75 million households that own, times average spending on home maintenance and improvement of $9 grand a year, we're looking at a 27 billion opportunity. And who's the team that's chasing this opportunity? So I already introduced myself. I'm a Chicago Booth MBA, a former real estate private equity manager, and I have domain expertise in residential real estate and contracting. And my co-founder is Alan Cruz, the former founder and developer of an app called eJournal, which was selected for the TechCrunch Crunchies Awards and was the #1 paid productivity app in the Microsoft App Store. To date, we've raised $10,000 through the Polsky Accelerator, and we're looking for $200,000 to hit our next milestone of 15 jobs a week at an acquisition cost of $75 per less. We are Epic, and we hope that you never again spend more than 60 seconds to find a home pro at a competitive price. And with that, we'll open it up for questions.
I'll just jump in. Good job with the pitch, very clear and concise. Can you break down your use of funds? I'm curious to know how you all are going to get to that target you have there for 15 jobs a week.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a little bit of tech difficulty again. Let me move back. So how we're going to get to the 15 jobs a week. Right now, I'm working on this idea part-time because I'm bootstrapping. So I'm putting about 40 hours a week into it. I'm going to come onto the idea full-time. Alan is already working through the idea full-time. We've got interns that we plan to hire as well to help with the marketing fulfillment. And right now, like the most traction that we've seen is through video advertising on Facebook, which we've really just hit on. We're going to double down on that, and we plan to do significant video advertising through Facebook, as well as kind of doing more like organic kind of on the ground campaign in Eastern Iowa.
Got it. So majority of the funds will go towards like compensating the team, and then on top of that, you're going to pump some more into ads. I just didn't know if there was like a more like detailed like go to market like pathway or timeline that you wanted to speak on or share.
No, that's our 18-month runway, subsistence level salary for founders, as well as additional help and marketing expenditure.
Thank
our
you.
operating costs are pretty negligible.
Gotcha.
And then I will go to John.
Yeah, hey, how are you like onboarding and vetting the pros today? And then how do you ensure quality when you scale? That seems to be the problem with other people that have tried to do this in the past.
Sure. So how we find our pros right now is actually we just go to, Home Advisor, Thumbtack, Angie's List. We find pros that have already been vetted by other platforms. And when we talk to them, almost always they're dissatisfied and are actually even really no longer working with the platform, although they've been advertised over there. Simply by being, right, it's like a Coke Pepsi dilemma, simply by being not Coke, so being not Home Advisor, it's very easy for us to convince quality professionals to come over to our platform. And then going to Jackie.
So this, I mean, I know you kind of talk about the big competitors, but there's a ton of folks that are going after this space. I mean, it is a big problem, but how do you think about acquisition costs as you scale? I mean, I know you're in a specific geo right now that might not be as competitive. How do you think about keeping those low enough to, make a customer worth it?
Sure. I mean, we have to get some component of virality if we're going to rely on SEM and Google Ads, right? I think it's going to be very difficult to get that customer acquisition cost down. So we're starting to look at a referral program. I mean, we already have people using the app that love it. So if we can, simply implement that referral program and give them a benefit for bringing in, somebody else, yeah, I think that's probably going to be our cheapest path to decreasing the CAC. And then Jackie, I see you still have your hand up. I'm not sure if you had any.
Oh, I just I left it up.
Not a problem. Prashant?
Yeah, I'm curious. I know you talked a little bit about how the tech works, but what have you done to kind of validate that you can really get around some of the basic questions that a Thumbtack or any of the other smaller players require the homeowner to answer?
Sure. So is the question, so because they asked this, 20 questions, multiple choice format, how do we get around that?
No, it's like if I take a photo of something that's broken, how do you know what's broken? And how do you know how to fix it?
So within the video, you describe the problem. So it's not just a video, it's you describing, for example, I have soffit fascia damage on this corner of my house, showing a picture of it and saying, I would like to get it repaired. And there is naturally sometimes, because of the video format and being a homeowner, right? You don't always know, like you're not the professional, right? You don't always have the answer. So there is some ambiguity. And that's why oftentimes we'll see professionals quote a range, and then there's an additional details field that they can fill out, just to kind of qualify the estimate if there is ambiguity.
I want to take a quick moment to thank all of our judges for being here today. Jackie, Jonathan, Neil, Prashant. I'm so grateful that the new format of Demo Day allowed us an opportunity to learn more about your perspectives and insights. I spoke yesterday about how the previous demo days have given me a lot of hope for managing the new circumstances of the world, and today did not let me down in the hope department. So it was great to hear about the opportunities and the way to kind of be present and seize what's in front of us. So thank you all for your time today and supporting our teams. I want to take an additional moment to thank our donors to the Caruso Zio Foundation. Donna and Philip Zarconi, and Ellen Rudnick and Paul Earl. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to lift these teams up over their 10-week sprint, and we appreciate you.